Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, limiting nuclear threats on Earth. A key treaty aimed at curbing its deployment has just expired. President Trump rejected an offer from his Russian counterpart to extend it. Why and what comes next? The U.S. says Beijing has conducted a secret nuclear test. More on Trump's plan as the U.S. faces growing nuclear threats from both China and Russia.
China remains on track to have over 1,000 nuclear warheads by 2030, and Russia is supporting this buildup.
Preparations mount ahead of a possible attack on Taiwan. The U.S. has successfully tested new attack drones as it strengthens military cooperation with Taiwan. Meanwhile, China unveils new hypersonic missiles. And one of our viewers asks if America is building places to refine rare earth minerals to reduce reliance on China's supply chain. We break it down. Limiting nuclear weapons of major countries. President Trump rejected an offer from his Russian counterpart to extend the cap on strategic nuclear weapons deployments. That's after the treaty that held them in check expired on Thursday. Here's more.
President Donald Trump on Thursday rejected an offer from Russian President Vladimir Putin to voluntarily extend the New START nuclear arms control treaty. The agreement, which caps the number of deployed strategic warheads at 1,550 on each side, was signed in 2010 and expired Thursday. It allowed for only a single extension, which Putin and former President Joe Biden agreed to for 5 years in 2021. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt read Trump's social media post to reporters.
Rather than extend New START, a badly negotiated deal by the United States, which I will add was renegotiated under former President Barack Obama, aside from everything else, is being grossly violated. The president wants to have our nuclear experts work on a new, improved, and modernized treaty that can last long into the future, and that's what the United States will continue to discuss with the Russians.
Earlier, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Russia was still ready to engage in dialogue with the U.S. if Washington responded constructively to Putin's proposal. Stefan Dujarric, the spokesperson for the UN Secretary General, urged the two sides to keep working on a deal.
This is a very dangerous period, not to have a framework dealing with these nuclear weapons. We hope very much that the talks will be positive and will be fruitful.
Trump has said he wants to replace New START with a better deal, bringing in China. But Beijing has declined negotiations with Moscow and Washington. It has a fraction of their warhead numbers, an estimated 600, compared to around 4,000 each for the U.S. and Russia.
Nuclear power threats facing the U.S. back in the spotlight. The U.S. says China conducted a secret nuclear test in 2020. That's as Washington calls for a new nuclear arms control treaty involving both China and Russia after the previous one expired. Here's Thomas Donano, Undersecretary of State for Arms Control, speaking in Geneva Friday.
I can reveal that the U.S. government is aware that China has conducted nuclear explosive tests, including preparing for tests with designated yields in the hundreds of tons.
Donano says the Chinese military hid their testing by decreasing the effectiveness of seismic monitoring. U.S.'s treaty with Russia to curb nuclear arms expired Thursday. For the first time since the 70s, there's no cap on the number of nuclear weapons the U.S. and Russia can deploy. Now, President Trump is pushing for a new treaty that must also include China. It comes as the U.S. is facing growing threats, not from just one, but two nuclear powers.
China remains on track to have over 1,000 nuclear warheads by 2030, and Russia is supporting this buildup by helping China develop the weapons-grade fissile material necessary for its expansion.
China's ambassador on disarmament says his country would not participate in new negotiations at this stage with the U.S. and Russia. Russia's foreign minister said the country prefers dialogue with the U.S., but it's also ready for any scenario. Secretary of State Marco Rubio posted Friday that Russia and China should not expect the U.S. to stand still while they expand their nuclear forces. He added that the U.S. would maintain a modernized nuclear deterrent. Last year, President Trump ordered the War Department to begin testing nuclear weapons. Notably, the order came less than an hour before his meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in South Korea. Trump said China, Russia, and North Korea have been testing nuclear weapons, and he doesn't want to be the only country that doesn't test. 4 months ago, the Washington Post reported China has been rapidly expanding a historic nuclear test site. According to satellite images, that site is where Beijing tested its first atomic bomb in the 60s. And joining us to provide insight on China's secret nuclear tests and the likelihood of China coming under a new arms control treaty is Gregory Copley. He's the president of the International Strategic Studies Association. Gregory Copley, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Great to be with you, Tiffany.
Now, the U.S. is accusing China of conducting secret nuclear tests. This was back in 2020. Now, this comes after the New START treaty expired between Russia and the U.S. First, what's your reaction to China's secret tests?
Well, we know that China has been testing not only nuclear weapons, but also deployments of missiles, testing new delivery systems, including hypersonic systems, including fractional orbital bombardment systems, which are in polar orbit, delivered around the world. So you've got China's been doing a lot. But bear in mind that China has not been circumscribed by any of these treaties, the Cold War origin treaties, which the US and the Soviet Union had signed. So basically, China was out of the loop, and almost deliberately so, under the terms of the New START treaty, which is now coming to an end, which President Obama negotiated with post-Soviet Russia. He did not, and deliberately did not, engage the People's Republic of China in this. So it was as though this New START treaty had circumscribed the options of both post-Soviet Russia and the United States without in any way inhibiting the People's Republic of China. So that was a very, very bad treaty for all concerned, except for the People's Republic of China.
And what would it take to bring China to the table for a new treaty? What type of global pressure would be needed for that?
Well, I think we are in a good position to see China brought to the table on that, if it matters at all. The fact is that Xi Jinping is in an incredibly difficult position in terms of retaining power personally. He will definitely make accommodations to President Trump, or at least express the willingness to make those accommodations, simply to get the US off his back, not just on nuclear weapons, but also on economic treaties, tariffs and the like, so that he can be given a little breathing space to survive. Without some kind of breathing space from President Trump, he is likely to be fully disrobed, if you like, of all the trappings of power, because in a sense he's lost his power already, but the trappings of power will go, and with that, his opportunity to claw back real power will go, unless he gets President Trump on his side. And to a great degree, he already has President Trump on his side. I say that from a Western point of view, that's an unfortunate thing, because by giving President Trump, by giving President Xi a breathing space, it doesn't help the Chinese population at all. It does minimize to a degree the imminent possibility of a mainland Chinese attack on Taiwan, perhaps, but it just postpones dealing with the real problem, which is the Communist Party of China's continued existence. And with Xi either as head of the Communist Party or Xi as just an absolute dynastic type dictator of the country. So unfortunately, President Trump is sensing that he can get a deal from Xi Jinping right now. But what's the value of that for the United States? It might be valuable politically for President Trump to say that he has now got a deal with China and a deal with President Putin in Russia. But we have to ask ourselves, what's the real value of doing these deals if it merely kicks the problem down the road and we don't solve the problem right now?
And on that note, China's Xi had back-to-back phone calls earlier this week, first with Russia's Putin and then with President Trump. What were your thoughts on those calls and what impact they could have, specifically the Xi and Trump one?
Well, I think the Xi-Trump talks or talk on the telephone would have covered a broad range of topics. We probably will never know what fully was discussed, but you'd have to assume that nuclear arms limitation would be part of that. And right now, for President Xi or General Secretary Xi, that would be an easy one to accommodate because he's got bigger fish to fry. He just wants to have the appearance that President Trump is behind him and supports him as the sole leader, if you like, of the PRC at a time when the party elders and the reformists and the military are literally all trying to get Xi out of the picture altogether. So I think that the phone call would have dealt briefly, at least, with the post-New START, the nuclear weapons treaty. It would have dealt in part with the Taiwan issue of Taiwan. And again, I think Xi could have given some assurances that that's not a priority at the moment, even though he could invoke that as a priority to distract the Chinese people at any time. I don't think he will, because the PLA will almost certainly not go along with it.
A lot of moving parts for sure. Gregory Copley, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tiffany.
The U.S. and Taiwan have successfully tested a new jet-powered attack drone. The move aims to quickly enhance Taiwan's ability to deploy a large number of low-cost weapons against a potential Chinese invasion. U.S.-based Kratos Defense Systems says engineers from both sides validated a Taiwanese mission payload on the company's Mighty Hornet 4 drone. In a statement Thursday, they called the test a major milestone that could lead to deeper military cooperation. The drone's designed to function like a low-cost cruise missile, with plans to deploy large quantities in Taiwan as both a deterrent and a wartime asset. It comes as Taiwan expands security ties with the U.S., while China continues to increase military pressure around the island. The island nation reported that Chinese warplanes and warships have been operating nearby almost every day. It's part of China's gray zone tactics to provoke Taiwan without attacking it head-on. Taiwan's defense minister says Chinese military activity near the island rose 23% last year. And as Taiwan works more closely with the U.S. on new drone technology, China is bolstering its own military. Chinese scientists say they're developing an ultra-small hypersonic glide missile that can reportedly be launched from a standard anti-aircraft gun. Researchers claim the tiny missile can travel at nearly 6 times the speed of sound and potentially strike drones on aircraft for more than 12 miles away. Because of its speed and small size, pilots might have only seconds to react once it's detected. Computer simulations suggest the missile could adjust mid-flight to track fast-moving targets. But engineers noted that it's challenging to control the movement at such extreme speeds. The project highlights the ongoing race between the U.S. and China to develop faster, cheaper, and more advanced weapon systems. It comes as tensions around Taiwan continue to intensify. Coming up, one of our viewers asked if America is building places to refine rare earth minerals to reduce reliance on China's supply chain. We break it down. And SpaceX is in the spotlight. 2 senators urging the Pentagon to review SpaceX for its alleged China ties. More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. One of our viewers asked if America is building facilities to refine rare earth minerals to reduce reliance on China's supply chain. The answer is a resounding yes. From pilot plans to larger commercial operations, rare earth refining facilities are being built in the U.S. However, they're still in the early stages of scaling up. Here are several examples. Phoenix Tailings opened a rare earth refinery facility in Massachusetts to process rare earth metals domestically instead of exporting the ores abroad. And in Indiana, ReElement Technologies is expanding refining capacity to produce refined rare earth oxides. Smaller companies are building rare earth refineries in Wyoming, Utah, Texas, and Louisiana. Most of the new development mentioned above occurred last year under the Trump administration. 2 Democratic senators are urging the Pentagon to review SpaceX. The move comes amid allegations that Chinese investors may have acquired stakes in the company. Senators Elizabeth Warren and Andy Kim sent a letter to War Secretary Pete Hegseth. They cited media reports and court testimony that suggest Chinese-linked funds were routed through offshore entities to buy SpaceX shares. SpaceX is a major War Department contractor. It launches military and intelligence satellites and operates the Starlink communications network used by the Pentagon. The senators warned that any Chinese ownership could pose national security risks. They've asked the Pentagon to disclose any Chinese investment and outline steps to address potential security concerns. SpaceX was founded by Elon Musk. The company plays a central role in U.S. national security infrastructure as it launches military and intelligence satellites. Its Starlink communications network is also extensively used by the Pentagon. During the Russia-Ukraine war, Starlink has provided support for Ukraine's defense. IKEA is shutting down 7 stores in China, including locations in Shanghai and Guangzhou, amid a weakening economy. The closures took effect on Monday and mostly impact large mall locations. After the changes, it will still operate 34 physical stores, along with several digital channels and e-commerce platforms. Instead of expanding on larger sites, the company is shifting strategy. IKEA says it will focus on smaller stores and stronger online shopping. The company plans to open more than 10 smaller stores as a replacement over the next 2 years, with Beijing and Shenzhen as key markets. IKEA, the world's largest home furnishings retailer, says this is part of a long-term transformation towards a more flexible business model in the country. Japan's first female premier and her coalition are widely expected to win the election on Sunday. In addition to a public mandate for spending plans, they're pushing for a defense buildup. This would maintain Japan's tough stance toward Beijing and could further strain relations.
Endorsed by Trump,
Madam Prime Minister,
backed by young voters, and facing sharp criticism from China, Japan's first female Prime Minister, Sanai Takaichi, is seeking to secure her grip on power in the national election on February 8th. Here are some key factors to watch out for. Takaichi's coalition is widely expected to win, according to opinion polls. They show her Liberal Democratic Party and its partner, the Japan Innovation Party, could capture around 300 seats in the 465-seat lower house of parliament. An election promise to suspend the 8% sales tax on food was aimed squarely at voters. Koichi Nakano is a political science professor at Sophia University in Tokyo.
I think there are a lot of people in Japan, the voters, who are particularly now finally drawn to politics to a certain degree, who are worried deeply about the rising cost of living.
But the move has shaken market confidence in an economy facing the heaviest debt burden in the developed world. In recent weeks, investors have fled Japanese government bonds and sent the yen into crisis mode. However, with other parties pushing for deeper tax cuts and broader spending, some analysts say an LDP victory could end up being the least worst option for financial markets. Support for Takaichi is strongest among younger voters, according to polls. Some have even rushed to copy her clothes and accessories in a craze dubbed Sauna Mania. Her modest background and nationalistic rhetoric have struck a chord with a disenchanted youth, hopeful she can pull Japan out of a decades-long economic stagnation. That means the election result may hang on whether younger Japanese bother going to polling stations on Sunday. If the polls have it all wrong and she loses her lower house majority, Takaichi has said she'll resign. Some officials say a resounding victory could strengthen Takaichi's position in the dispute with Beijing over how Tokyo might respond to a Chinese attack on Taiwan. China, however, has shown no signs of backing down. Takaichi's plan to strengthen Japan's defenses will likely also draw more anger from Beijing, which has cast the endeavor as an attempt to revive Tokyo's past militarism. But while this bet is starting to weigh on the world's fourth largest economy, it has hardly hurt Takaichi's high approval ratings. US President Donald Trump has given his total endorsement of Takaichi, adding he would meet her at the White House on March 19th. In a Truth Social post, he said Takaichi is, quote, someone who deserves powerful recognition for the job she and her coalition are doing. Trump has increasingly sought to shape foreign elections, And experts say such interventions signal a growing pattern of aligning with right-wing leaders abroad.
A boost for Japan's semiconductor sector and a win for Takaichi, Taiwan's TSMC, the world's largest chip manufacturer, is set to produce some of the world's most advanced AI semiconductors in Japan. The company plans to make 3-nanometer chips at a factory currently under construction. These chips will power AI applications, robotics, and self-driving technologies. The move is seen as a boost for Japan's chip-making ambitions and comes ahead of a general election. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi called the project significant for economic security. TSMC began mass-producing less advanced chips at another Japanese factory in 2024. Meanwhile, the company is also expanding in the U.S., including new facilities in Arizona to meet rising global AI demand. That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. Round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you soon.